The Pope has died. We began our coverage in the last hour. This will be for any number of days, given the process of the conclave. We're trying to bring you people steeped in a knowledge of the past and the present and decidedly the future guests of the church. It's Natalia Imperatori-Lee. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And this is sort of like Soto going from the Yankees to the Mets.
Yep.
She is with Manhattan University and will join Fordham here. She will return to her Fordham here in the coming months. Natalia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. In 2018, you were in a wonderful book with the leadership of Cardinal O'Malley of Boston, talking about hope in Pope Francis. I would suggest the hope here is that he will stay a more pastoral, a less bureaucratic, a less traditional Catholic Church. Can that happen? Can we sustain what he wrought over 12 years?
Well, I think, thank you for having me. I think that is the sincerest hope of many of us in the church right now, that the legacy of Francis is that, I would argue, more traditional papacy, which is pastoral, which is vulnerable, which is sort of leading with compassion. I think that will be sort of the test of whether this church wants to embrace these sort of return to relevance that Francis gave it, or whether we're going to sort of retrench in a different direction.
Away from that is the idea that he reformed the church, that he put a lot of the old conservative guard out and brought in new people. Within this vote, would he know that he's got enough new people on the block that he can sustain the pastoral vision of the gentleman from Argentina?
Well, we're not sure right now. I think a lot of the front runners, although it feels horrible to talk about that today, but a lot of the front runners are people who think like Pope Francis. However, he was very different from previous popes in that he didn't really stack the deck. He didn't only appoint people who thought like him. So once again, that humility that was a hallmark of his papacy is coming through. However, by appointing people from all over the world, especially from places where Christianity is a minority religion, I think we're going to see a very different kind of conclave from the ones before this one.
Natalia, what is the health of the Catholic Church these days? Obviously rocked by the sexual scandals over the last several decades on a global basis. What is the relative health of the Catholic Church these days?
Well, I think it's no longer in a hospice situation like it was at the height of the clerical abuse and cover-up scandal. I think we're facing right now a sort of precarious moment where Francis had a dozen years to kind of bring the church back to basics. So care for the poor, concern for the earth, attention to the most vulnerable, those in prison, migrants. He did a lot of that work to rehabilitate, I think, the health of the church. And you can see that in the crowds that followed him around, the crowds in St. Peter's, even just yesterday. However, it's still, we're in a world where values like humility and vulnerability and openness to the other and genuine listening are not exactly in vogue. And so the church has an opportunity to be really prophetic in this moment. And I genuinely hope that it takes that opportunity.
Is there an expectation that the church will lean more conservative or more liberal at this particular point? If you look at, other governmental institutions around the world, decidedly more nationalistic, decidedly more conservative. Is there any sense that the church reflects that?
Well, it's obviously a possibility. It's a trend, like you said, governmentally, but perhaps because it is a trend governmentally, the bishops, who are an international body, will see this as an important moment to not go in that direction, to kind of stand as a prophetic sign against the nationalistic tendencies of so many governments around the world.
Please discuss the part of the church. I mean, this is a pope that came off the Jesuits and with Francis off of Assisi of Umbria. Yep. Is that predominant now, that we should look at the groups of the church? Or is it basically he was unique and different from the operation of the Vatican in Rome?
Well, when he was elected, he was certainly unique and different, right? It was quite
Yeah.
a moment. Latin American, a Jesuit who have been sort of in and out with the popes throughout history. Um, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if this means that he was an anomaly. I hope not. I hope it marks what the Second Vatican Council began with a move toward a more global and less Euro-American reality in the church. But
Right.
we is the crazy thing about being Catholic, right? We won't know. They'll go into a conclave, and all we
Yeah.
can do for lay people is wait and pray and hope and send our best wishes. And my hope is that that he's not an anomaly. My hope is that he's sort of the beginning of something of a real renaissance for the church.
Do you have a favorite among this? I mean, as you said, it's inappropriate at this time to speak of it, but you're so expert on this, and your chapter on hope and Cardinal Malley's book, I thought, was extraordinary. I mean, just quickly here, Professor, do you have a visible favorite, or is it an unknown into this conclave?
Well, there are front runners. Cardinal Parolin is one. Cardinal Pizzaballa from Jerusalem, I think, is a really interesting choice. Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines would be incredible.
Right.
He has been very much aligned with Francis's sort of love of the poor and love of the earth. Those are my top three right now, but it's such a long road
Right.
here and there. And again, Francis was himself
Right.
a complete surprise. And so maybe we'll get a complete surprise. I just hope it's a good one.
Well, we hope to call upon you again in the coming days. Professor, thank you so much. Natalia Imperatori-Lee at Manhattan College here with all of her expertise on her Catholic Church